What's good, fam? This your boy Kelvin here from the What's Good Bro podcast. In our latest episode, we had our good brother Keely on, who's an ex-cop, and he dropped a lot of good gems for us, man. And like we promised, we're gonna drop that part 2. We're gonna do that today. So hope y'all listen, like, and enjoy, and most importantly, hope y'all learn something from it, man. Love.
Quick question: how many hours did it take to get to become a police officer? Like when you go through training, I seen a post on Instagram and it was I don't know if it was really true or not.
You want to break it into hours?
Well, because I saw something that's
Alright,
like barbers, they spend more time or hours getting their certification than a police officer to become a police officer. I don't know if that was true or not.
So here's the thing. I don't believe everything that you see.
Yeah.
Right. If you have the means to do so, contact somebody who really knows. And this is exactly what you guys do. So I really appreciate you guys asking me on the show so that I can help clear the air. Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a big bridge, there's a big gap, and a lot of that gap is shrouded in secrecy and ignorance. When I say ignorance, I literally mean it by the definition of just not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll give you an example. For me, I went into the academy in April. I didn't graduate from the academy until I want to say
this old man said kicking in.
Either December or February. And mind you, that's because I think it was 5 to 6 months in the academy. And then I think it was like a 2 to 3 month period on what's called field training.
Okay.
I had a field training officer. It was literally like a babysitter, except they told you everything you did was awful. But they did that because they wanted you. If you had a good FTO, and I did, 100%, solid guy from New York, love him to death, even to this day. They always told you where you could improve.
Yeah.
Always, because you can always improve. There's always something. Being a cop, being in law enforcement is so dynamic. There is hardly ever a situation where you handle it perfectly. There's always a way in which you can improve. And those improvements are little golden nuggets that you can put on your tool belt in terms of, okay, well, I handled this like this last time. Let me use it for this upcoming situation. Let me use it for this situation. Let me use this other strategy for this situation. So if you think about it, 40 hours a week at least, and it was definitely more than that because it's the academy. You're there early, you're there late.
Yeah,
40 hours a week. 40 hours a week for, let's say, 6 months. You do the math.
Yes.
That's a while. That's a while. And then what you don't factor in is when you're on FTO, you're sitting there and you've now been cast into the situation. I remember when I got put onto the street and I was in FTO, when I was in field training, I literally had a headache every day for like a solid 3 weeks because there was so much being thrown at me. Even after going through 6 months of 5 to 6 months of academy training, there's just so much that I had to ingest mentally and emotionally. Because there are things that you see that you can't unsee. Right? Yep. So there's just so much to ingest. So you factor in the other amount of time that you spend writing reports because you botched the first one. Now you're working in overtime because you messed up something. The hours are long. So for some departments, it's maybe less. But for the departments that I served on, it was lengthy.
So just to piggyback on that, I know you mentioned like stress and everything. Do you feel that some of these situations have transpired due to some type of form of PTSD?
100%. And I'm going to be as crystal clear as I can be on this. I definitely think that a lot of law enforcement suffers from PTSD. And I know some people may not like me saying that, and I know some people may disagree with me, but But the facts are this. The things that you see in the law enforcement capacity are not normal, right? Now that I'm out, now that I am no longer in law enforcement, I don't go through a day thinking how many dead bodies I'm going to see. I don't go through a day thinking that I'm going to show up to a call and it's going to be chaos and there's going to be blood and somebody's going to get stabbed and then I'm going to chase somebody. I might get stabbed. Again, you know, it's one of those things where you are subjected to so much dysfunction, even though you may be somebody that is whole, right? You have integrity. You came from a great background. You have a family that you're raising, right? You have all of these things that you're doing properly, but you are literally called upon for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day to fix problems.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody calls the police just because, you know, Jamal graduated from high school.
It's never
right?
a celebration.
Yep. And so that's what I'm saying. That's a problem. In community policing, in the days of community policing, Jamal graduated from high school. Guess what? We're there.
Yeah.
Yo, congrats. Congrats. Go be something. Go do great things. Nowadays, it's ripping and running from call to call. And there's no, hey, come over because Jamal. And the thing is, everybody gives law enforcement the side eye now because of these incidents that occur. And a lot of people paint law enforcement with this wide brush.
Yeah.
Because one cop did a bad thing. Say that one cop is 1 out of 50. Now all 49 of the other ones are bad? No, maybe there's 1 or 2 other ones in there that need to get gone as well, but the other 47 are solid law enforcement officers. So when I say unequivocally, yes, there is PTSD that's rampant in law enforcement, I truly believe it. Having seen it, having dealt with cops that have taken their own lives, which is a huge problem that you don't really hear too much about. Yeah. Right? And also for like cops where you think about, I'm a cop, I'm African American, I'm black, and I'm policing my community and my neighborhood, and I'm policing people that look just like me. And I came and I joined because I wanted to affect change, but I feel like I'm not able to change anything. Mm. Right? I'm just one cop. Yeah. I go call to call trying to do my best. But it still feels like every day is the same thing. There are unequivocally a lot of people suffering from PTSD in the law enforcement realm, and that's something else that needs to be addressed. Like I said, it's going to take hard work, and you're going to have to shine light. We are going to have to shine light on all of these dark corners of law enforcement, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and people aren't going to like it. And you know what's going to happen? When you turn the lights on, some roaches are going to scatter. Mm-hmm. And trust, those are the ones that we don't need anyway.
Right.
So this is important, these topics, these conversations, and honestly, from both sides of the fence, understanding, empathy, and compassion is important. But what we really need to do is root out racism.
Yeah.
Root out racism inside law enforcement. If you're a cop and you know another cop is a racist, point it out. Stand up, say something, do something.
And right, I get where you're coming from, definitely. But how do you do that where technically policing came from, as far as we know, from a slave catcher's mentality? Like the badge was used to capture runaway slaves. So how do you incorporate that when that is the history in the background?
Right. That's you know what? That's a great question. It is a great question. And it's one of those things that plagues the law enforcement society. I mean, the law enforcement industry. You take a look at the industry and you understand, like, okay, well, it's 2020. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, racism is not around. What? No, please get out of here.
Yeah.
It is. It's alive and well, and it's steeped in law enforcement. Let me explain to you. If you have some law enforcement departments, right, that are still using, like, Windows 98.
Wow.
How are you still using Windows 98? But I'm expecting for you and your department to have changed over the years your opinions and feelings and how you treat hire and treat the African American community and hire African Americans into your department. I'm supposed to be expected to think that there's been this great change over the years when you don't even upgrade from fax or from Windows 98. I'm not saying, and that's a hyperbole. Let me take a step back. I'm not saying there's any link between the two. But what I am saying is law enforcement has been steeped for years, grown from racism.
Yeah.
So the question you ask of how do we combat that? How we combat that is with law. Law and making effective change. Hiring people that look like the demographic that they serve. And also creating safe spaces where cops can say, hey, listen, I know Officer X exhibits racist behavior. And those officers need to be pursued relentlessly. I'll give you an example, right? So when I first came into law enforcement, I was approached and I actually worked undercover for internal affairs. Right? I don't tell many people this, but it's been years. And one thing that I've recognized now is that people need to know these stories.
Yeah.
I worked internal affairs I worked undercover in internal affairs. And we would spend a lot of time and energy pursuing and trying to investigate officers that were accused of police brutality, excessive force, stealing money, you name it. Those top offenses were investigated. And I was used as the undercover that would interact with these police officers that had these accusations lodged against them. Now, that being the case, I thought that was a great program. I really enjoyed working for that unit, and we did some really solid work. However, the same approach needs to be used when it comes to racist law enforcement officers. Understand, they are, if not the biggest, the top detriment to law enforcement as a whole. As a whole. Look at the powder keg that just set off across the country.
Yeah.
Do you think the officer that handled George Floyd was the only one?
Not at all.
No. It's rampant across the country. So if we have programs that are built to target and investigate officers that have been accused of theft, fraud, abuse of power, excessive force, we need to make sure that we identify those that are exhibiting racist behaviors. And the consequences for such need to be enormous.
Understood.
Right.
Just based on that point there, I have a follow-up question.
Absolutely.
So I think it's essential that we see people in badges, officers actually call out other officers who are racist and are participating in police brutality in the same way that we see white people protest and actually speak out against racism generally amongst white people. Um,
Yep.
Do you think there may be a loyalty of, a fraternal like loyalty, or maybe even unions that may prevent police officers of actually being honest and open about, just disrespect, brutality, anything like that against the Black community?
Absolutely. So let me be clear. Unions are powerful. Police unions are powerful. Police unions, I also think, are necessary. They provide a lot of protection for law enforcement officers, not necessarily both from external threats. When I say external threats, I mean frivolous lawsuits and other things that can truly harm a law enforcement officer, but also from internal bureaucratic nonsense. There is a lot that unions do when it comes to representing officers. When you have a really bad supervisor that decides that because you are Black, they want to give you a hard time, right? There are protections that they can provide. Now, that being said, there should not be the same protections afforded to a racist cop, which is what I'm saying when it comes down to laws and having politicians engaged in making actual change. I think if you've been accused several times of being a racist cop, there's been an investigation into you, and it turns out that you have tendencies, there should be, your union representation should be strict. Period. I mean, it just doesn't sit. It just doesn't sit well with me that because you have a union and your accusations are that you are racist, you exhibit racist behaviors, you racially profile, you do all of these things, and you are going to get representation from a union.
Right.
But meanwhile, there are other cops in the same realm that are upholding the law, right, and do not exhibit these behaviors, and are African Americans, and they look at this and they feel downtrodden that no matter what I do, no matter how much we speak out against this one individual, they're protected. Those protections should not be afforded. Right, number one. Right. Number two, to your part about the, how do you say, the good old boys club, right? Okay. There's definitely a good old boys club in a lot of law enforcement, which does not include African Americans or a lot of minorities for that part, because it's the good old boys club, which is the large cadre of Caucasian officers that may feel or have feelings about minorities. And when I say large cadre, I mean the unified whole, right? I don't mean that there are large groups of them in each law enforcement department, but they are there. But there is amongst law enforcement as a whole a almost industry silence, right? To protect your own. Yeah. This is not an easy job. It's not an easy job, and it's a very difficult role. You go through a lot of things, you experience a lot of things, and even times there are individuals that you work with that you don't like, where one of you, either you are saving their life or they are saving your life. So there is this sort of brotherhood. Yeah. However, that brotherhood, just like union representation, should not be afforded to racist law enforcement. period. And the thing is, a lot of cops know who they are working with. I can tell you times when I have been told, you're one of the good ones. What? What does that even mean?
You're right.
What do you even mean by that? But being a black law enforcement officer, especially someone if they're on training or if they're still on probation, ruffling feathers, especially if it's coming from a position of power that's higher than you, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, when they say something like that, you know that your next words you have to choose wisely, or else you may be gone. Unless you don't really care, which some may say that was my style. It just depends on your risk tolerance. But the point is, it's unacceptable, and I urge, and I have no problem saying this. I know some people may be upset with me. That's fine. I may lose some friends. It's okay. But I urge law enforcement as a whole, look within. You know exactly who the racist ones are. Look within, point them out, call them out, do something, say something. There's nothing but a detriment to law enforcement as a whole.
Yeah. I got one last question, and I'm gonna then let everybody else if they got any more questions to kind of get on the summary. Well, we was on a protest. We could say earlier in the week, by the time the episode actually dropped. But one of the demands were to defund the police department. What are your opinions on that? You know, do you feel like that would be effective to defund the police department and kind of reinvest it into community-based organizations or projects or programs?
Well, that's an interesting stance, and I did see something about that floating around out there about defunding police departments. And I'm going to tell you why that is not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good idea because, like I said, we've spent a lot of time talking about bad cops. The world is polarized by the actions of bad cops. These bad cops are getting all of the attention, but they account for a very small group of law enforcement. So when you defund a police department, you are not hitting at the root cause.
Right.
You are really making the good cops and the good law enforcement officers suffer. And let me be clear. For those that think that, if you defund law enforcement, that will make things better, understand there is real crime out there. I know that a lot of the attention is on the events that led up to George Floyd's death. Trivial. I mean, absolutely nonsensical that someone should lose their life after being called over, what was it, a $20 fraud? Fraudulent $20 bill?
Yeah.
Yep, allegedly.
Right? That is asinine in every sense of the word. But do not think for a second that there are not career criminals out there that would 100% run rampant if law enforcement was to get defunded. Trust and believe. Everybody thinks that, there are, these bad cops out here. Let's take away all of the resources from both the bad cops and the good cops. Well, I hope you are prepared to defend yourself. Right? I hope you feel confident in your ability, because there are real takers out there. When I say real takers out there, I mean the murderers. I mean, the armed robbers. I mean, the people who, and I'll give you an example without using any names, the people who go to a party, shoot up the party, kill 3 people, then leave said party, go and rob a friend, not at gunpoint, but with a grenade in hand, have them drive to the bank and have them pull out all of the money and then threaten to kill their entire family. Those people are out there. Right? And I say this because that's a real example of just one person that I
sick as well.
Right?
Right.
Right? That's one person. And this is the point. And this is also the point that kind of really makes me upset about George Floyd. You talk about a fraudulent $20 bill. On the spectrum of crime that needs to be tended to. That's barely a citable offense. Barely.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't even reach the threshold of wasting the court's time. Meanwhile, you have other people out there that are career criminals that are getting away with mayhem. And let's not even, and that's just the violent career criminals. You have white collar crime that occurs. You've got you got cybercrime. You've got all sorts of different crime that occurs that isn't being paid attention to or doesn't get as much attention, but still happens. And meanwhile, we're paying attention to a fraudulent $20 bill. So, and to touch on that, one of the biggest things that I wanted to touch on when I was thinking about coming on this podcast, and I really appreciate you guys' opportunity, I prepared and I spoke with some of the most trusted colleagues that I've had in the industry and asked for their opinions on some of the topics because I wanted to make sure that I was providing a voice that actually spoke up and was fair to my law enforcement brothers and sisters, but I also wanted to make sure that I'm providing just, accurate, and good information for my African American and Black community. And one of the biggest issues that I have with law enforcement, and it's more so law enforcement management today, is statistical policing.
Okay.
There should be no reason why a supervisor or a lieutenant or a captain should pressure subordinates into getting more stats.
So this is like saying, the officer needs to get that monthly quota, and before the end of the month they need to have X amount of citations or tickets.
Yeah, so they wised up, right? And they wouldn't call it a monthly quota. What they would do, and this is me speaking from experience, right? And I'm not about the whole shrouded in secrecy thing, so I speak from experience. Right. What they would do is they'll call you into the office and tell you your traffic citations are low. Well, I'm sorry, but traffic doesn't really seem to be at the top of the threshold. We've got a burglary in progress, like every other hour. There are other things that need to be tended to versus these traffic citations. Well, you need to pick these numbers up. They didn't give you an exact quota, but they would say that you need to put these numbers up. And I'm sorry, I'm about to go down a rabbit hole on you guys, but this is information that people need to know, right? The statistical numbers, the numbers are asked, more numbers are asked from the squads that patrol certain neighborhoods. Okay? So let's just say, hypothetically, you have one precinct. In that precinct, you have 2 squads. One squad is assigned to the left side. One squad is assigned to the right side. The squad on the left side is told that they need to bring in high numbers. right? But it also just happens to be that the left side squad, the area that they police, is an overwhelming majority African American and minority. Meanwhile, the right side squad, they just need to bring in a couple of traffic citations here and there. Just make sure that it looks like they exist and did something throughout the day. And that neighborhood is an overwhelming majority Caucasian neighborhood. Statistical policing should not be used to drive cops. Crime will happen, and cops should respond. Yeah. Cops will go around and thwart crime. They will. It's in the DNA. They will look for crime in order to prevent it and stop it from happening in its tracks. But one thing that should not be done is for people to be pushed to go out there and find this crime. Or, I'm sorry, not find this crime, but go out there and, how do you say it? Get stats. Get stats. Because on one hand, you could go and catch a burglar in progress. You could go and catch some sort of armed robbery in progress. You know, those things happen fewer further in between. But then at the same time, in between those, you could be in the neighborhood canvassing and just walking around, getting to know the people in the community. That way they feel more comfortable talking to you and giving you good information. As opposed to going out and just racking up all sorts of traffic citations because it's going to get you Officer of the Month. Statistical policing should be done after the fact. When I say after the fact, I mean it should be done by data analysis, where they say, okay, this month these officers brought in, or these officers responded to these events. We are starting to notice a trend in this area. We can determine X, Y, and Z from this trend. That should be where it stops. It should not be, okay, this month, left side squad only had 20 arrests, right? And last month, you guys had 35. What's going on? Yeah. It should not be like that.
Oh, that's real. I really think you should. I don't know what the highest position is in the policing rank, but I think we need you up there. You know, I really value your insight, man. Just coming on this podcast to share your knowledge with us and our audience is definitely needed out here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And anyone got some last questions? Oh,
yeah. I just have one final question for you, at least for me.
Absolutely.
As civilians, what do you think is our next step to improving policing, at least in urban areas?
You know what? This whole time I have been speaking about what police can do, and that's an excellent question in terms of what civilians can do. What civilians can do is get involved and get to know your police. Engage. Go to the precinct and speak to your commanders and speak to whomever is in charge and engage them and say, hey, I would like to have a monthly town hall or a monthly meeting where you and a squad or you and some officers from the precinct are able to come and we are able to express our concerns and our accolades for the work that you do, right? Both the pros and the cons, and that way that puts a face to both sides. And it's not just you're responding to a call, you get there, and you're just dealing with this suspect. No, now that means that you're responding to a call, and now you're dealing with, oh, Mr. Jenkins, hey, we have a rapport. And what happens is now, if Mr. Jenkins is flying off the deep end, and, he's hooting and hollering, you can show up, and Mr. Jenkins now knows, hey, that's Officer Jones. Yeah, it's me, Officer Jones. This is Mr. Jenkins. What's the problem? How can we resolve it? Right? It's beneficial for both sides. Right? So if they don't come reaching out, right, and provide the community with solutions that they would like to see, understand they are still public servants. Go and ask them for a solution that you want to see. And do not stop at the precinct. Go to the police commissioner. Go to the mayor and say, we would like for this to happen. This is not a big order. This is not a tall order. There's nothing that actually needs to happen in writing for this to happen. It just, a meeting place needs to be established. It could be a park. It could be a school. It could be the basketball court. It could be wherever. But there needs to be some sort of face-to-face interaction where the community see the police when they're not flying by or responding to some call for service.
Just come over and shake
Which
some hands or
in turn leads to allowing cops to not have to deal with the statistical policing where they feel that, oh no, I got to get my stats up, and the sergeant's going to go make me walk foot. Or I'm not going to be able to, they're not going to put me in for that detective spot. No, that shouldn't be the case. And I just wanted to make sure I realized that I may have missed out earlier on your recourse when dealing with a bad officer, right? Mm-hmm. So number one is going to be document. Number two is going to be asking for a supervisor, right? When it's escalating, it's getting out of hand, ask for a supervisor. Record what you can. If you have a witness, have that witness write a statement so that it's ingrained and written down. If they're not able to record it, tell them, look, put on your mental recorder, right, and start taking notes of everything that's going on, because I want you guys to write a statement after this. You know, 3 witness statements or 2 witness statements are stronger than just your opinion or just what you write or what you say. The fourth thing is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go down this route. You shouldn't. This is what the problem is. You should not be afraid to call the police. You should not be afraid to talk to the police. But it seems that this system of racism has made it so that a lot of the African American community is afraid of the police. Don't be. Pull that veil away and understand that they are human beings as well. But at the same time, when you go down this road, you shouldn't be afraid to speak your truth, right? Now, when you have all this documentation, compile it and try to be as precise and clear as possible. Precise, clear, factual as possible. Right? It's okay to put in a little bit of an opinion, but you want to keep it to the facts. You want to try to write this like a police report yourself. Keep it to the facts. Who, what, when, where, why, if you know why, and how. Right?
Straight to the point.
And when you do that, file a complaint with internal affairs. Don't feel like that's getting anywhere? Send that complaint out to the commander of the precinct or whoever's in charge, and then also send that out to the mayor's office. And then also send that out to the police commissioner. Right? You spread this as high and as wide as you possibly can so that at some point, somebody's going to come asking what happened with this.
Right. And where did
you have to hold people accountable. And I know this last one, and you also have to continue to follow up with supervision. Listen, I used to be in law enforcement, but I have actually had to, over the past 6 months, deal with internal affairs from Montgomery County for a police officer that will just not leave me alone. And there's literally nothing that I've done.
Wow.
Right? But the thing is, if I didn't follow up, this would go to the wayside. But I continue to follow up. And now it's an issue. Now that officer receives a verbal reprimand, but he continues to come back. So now we have to go down the road of now I'm being harassed, right? And it's not going to end up well for him. But at the end of the day, the point is you have to continue to push the envelope. Not hearing anything is unacceptable. You should always have some sort of resolution. Either they looked into it and they found nothing. They looked into it and they decided to give them a verbal reprimand. They looked into it and they're following up. Something should occur. But what you have to do is you have to do your part and following up. You can't just file a complaint and sit back and say, "Oh, I did it. I'm done." No, follow up. Be persistent. This is the part where the whole process of racist policing is able to continue. Silence. Your silence. It depends upon silence. It depends on you not speaking out and speaking up.
That's a great point.
Speak up. Speak out and be persistent. And then, if none of that gets you anywhere, there's always social media. Not my favorite method, but one of my colleagues recommended it, and I figured I'd throw it out there because it is an option.
It's working now.
I was about to say, I think I was going to say that kind of seemed like the best last option. You know, is to put on social media.
Social media is wide.
Yeah.
It's vast. There's this thing called the internet.
All right.
And funny thing is, they have the internet in Maryland. They got the internet in Texas. They got the internet in Australia. They got the internet in Europe. It's everywhere. And if you go the route of social media, just know it's also a viable route. Yeah. It's just once you get the attention, be prepared to actually demand and use that attention for what you truly want, like what your true objective is.
Yeah.
Don't squander that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you get somebody's attention, know what you are looking for. Know what you're looking for. I want this officer to explain X, Y, and Z. I want this officer to. I want to know why this occurred in this manner. Don't sit back and say, "Well, I put it on social media and things like crazy, and that's good enough." No, that is not good enough. We are looking for solutions. When you get the action that you were looking for, and you start to get the attention that you were looking for, make sure you don't squander that opportunity to make actual change.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man, don't miss it.
All right, so we're gonna move forward to wrapping this up, and I really just want to give you the floor if you got any last words, anything else you wanted to add to our conversation.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
you go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for actually giving us some of your time and dropping all those jewels for us. Definitely needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, learned a lot
Absolutely.
for sure.
And just to follow up from what Darren was saying, just from me knowing who you are, I definitely appreciate you coming on and spending your knowledge. I mean, you've been doing this since I met you in 2009, so I understand your integrity as a man and definitely as a black man, and we need more of that in our community.
Absolutely. I'm glad. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys reaching out and thinking of me when this all went down. This has been heavy on the heart, and it's one of those things where even being a black man, having worn the badge, been in the role, tried to affect the change that I wanted to see, and also feeling for the current law enforcement officers that are caught in the midst of this, but didn't really do anything or have anything to do with it. Cops that were just like me, black officers, Caucasian officers, other minority officers that solely that truly feel that the change that they want to see starts with them are now caught up in the middle of this. This has all weighed heavily on my heart, and I found myself asking, how can I have an impact? And one of the ways that I figured I could have an impact was the moment you guys asked me to be on this podcast.
Right.
And to speak the truth and to be transparent. Because I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that currently wears a badge to actually save me from it.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that, because I agree that this impact will be huge, especially just thinking about our audience and their day to day and how they feel about police officers in general. So I'm excited to have them to listen to this and learn from it and just move with it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we'll be sure to try to get up soon after the Rona passes and everything.
Yeah.
Must.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while.
Right. Just, in the meantime, stay blessed, yo.
Hey, you too.
All right. We'll talk. Wow, man, we gotta really conclude that episode, that conversation.
God damn.
Yeah, with our good brother Keely, who served nearly a decade in being a police officer in Baltimore. We really appreciate his service. You can't really thank him enough, man. Just to go through that, man.
Not at all.
But yes, please listen to that episode and catch the gems that he dropped, because it was a whole lot of them, man.
A whole bunch of jewels, a whole bunch of gems.
Yes.
All that.
I'm proud of that, man. Autobots will happen.
Yeah, we ain't never gave y'all no information. We gave y'all something.
Right, yo. If it ain't started, it started here,
Yeah.
yo.
Another Frostburg alum.
Yep. Hey, man. Pull on the community, man. Community's a powerful thing, man. And it's just to know that we got that in ours, and he was willing to share his insight, man. We got to be grateful for that, and hope y'all received that information. And any last words, last quotes?
Look, if you follow us, you follow our podcast, you listen to us, you support us, definitely listen, take the time to listen to this, absorb this. This is good information from our good brother here. He took the time out just to inform everybody of, just all the years of information that he has. We really would appreciate that. So just make sure you listen and taking all the information.
Yeah, don't just take it and listen, but also take it, run with it, share it so someone else can hear it. Y'all should know where to find us if you don't. We on Instagram, WGB Podcast. Facebook now, What's Good, Bro? What else? We on YouTube, What's Good, Bro? Just find us. Honestly, you can type in What's Good, Bro on almost any social media and find us.
It's here, yo.
And we definitely gonna post it. We're gonna post it because y'all need to hear it.
Another thing, I will say we about 1 year in. I forgot the actual date, but I feel like it's here, if not already passed. So I would say congratulations, y'all.
Congratulations.
Started with a brick wall and no table.
You know what I'm saying?
No tape.
And we are still here doing it. Niggas made it through Rona. Even though Rona is still here, but we still protecting ourselves, and we are still here ourselves. So that's love, yo.
And on the last note, just because my LP was on here, this is just a little phrase we used to say back in the day.
Okay. All for one, one for all. F those haters, we gonna ball. All right, we gonna end that. I like that one. Oh man. One for all. Yeah, them chants used to get